Hello, hello. Thanks for joining. We're just about at time. We're going to give folks a few minutes to get signed in and settled in. While we are waiting for more folks to join us and start the webinar, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We do have a chat feature here, so feel free to type in your role, where you're located, what firm you're a part of, so we can get to know each other. And we'll begin in just a moment. Awesome. All right. I'm starting to see folks starting to trickle in. Hi, Carrie. I see Pete's on the line. We have Reiko from R3A Architecture. Awesome. So if you're just joining us, we're going to be kicking off the webinar in just about a minute or so. I've asked the folks on the webinar today to just use the chat to introduce yourself. Feel free to let us know what firm you're a part of, what your role is. We're excited to kick it off. Couple housekeeping items. One thing I did want to mention before we start, we do have a Q&A session. So, on today's topic of, having a strategy behind your dam, there may be some questions that you all may want to ask. Let's use that Q&A section towards the bottom of the screen instead of the chat. So this way I can see all of your questions. The chat can get a little noisy. All right, we're about to kick it off in about 60 seconds or so. But it's nice to see everyone coming in. And we're going to get it started. So thanks for joining today. Today's webinar is going to be about implementing a dam, sustainable strategies for long-term success. So let's go ahead and kick it off. I'm going to get into some introductions and we'll go through the agenda. So I'm Kyle. My name's Kyle. I'm here on the customer success team with OpenAsset. I've been here for about 5 years this month. And I've worked closely with the Perkins Eastman team on helping them implement their employee module and really get them to a place where they are starting to drive more value out of OpenAsset than they were prior. And I would say my main role here is to be a strategic partner. So I try to work with all of my clients that I work with on aligning their OpenAsset with their proposal process. Now, I'm going to kick it off to Caroline so she can introduce herself. But like I said, I've been working with Caroline for the past 5 years. And Caroline, let's go ahead and have you introduce yourself because I know you could do a better job than I.
It might feel like 5, but it's actually 2. You've been working with Perkins Eastman for 5 years, but I only really joined in 2022. So my name is Caroline. Thank you all for joining and listening. Just a little background about me. I have a master's in library and information science, and I've been in the business of organizing records for just about 10 years now. Before I got into dams, my work primarily was in archives and special collections, specifically for nonprofits and museums. And like I said, in 2022, I was hired to be the dam manager at Perkins Eastman. And Perkins Eastman is a global design firm headquartered in New York, but we also have 24 offices around the globe and over 900 employees. When I started, Perkins Eastman had OpenAsset, but there was no one person dedicated to owning it. And really, like Kyle said, he was my strategic partner, like my partner in crime. And he was just extremely available for me as I got to know the system and wanted to start testing some things out. And I was really excited to do this webinar today because while I think there's a lot of material out there on how to implement a dam, there's really not a lot on how to maintain it. And this is where a dam strategy would come in. In a nutshell, the strategy is going to be your roadmap for success. It aligns with your company's priorities, outlines the objectives, goals, and strategies, and really it just tells you how your dam is going to work at its best.
Awesome. Thanks, Caroline. So what to expect for today? On today's agenda, we definitely want to make sure that we're discussing, the risk of not having a strategy with your dam, and then all of the benefits that come with having a strategy in place. Background and impact of having a dam strategy, and then how can you actually build a dam strategy? We'll also save some time for questions and answers. So please use that Q&A section at the bottom. So just diving into some of the risk of not having a dam strategy. Typically, we see wasted time, poor collaboration, and inconsistent branding. We want to make sure that there is a plan in place, so this way folks aren't going to implement the dam and not have a plan in place where we're wasting time. We typically see inconsistent branding as well. We want to make sure that there's a strategy behind the types of assets that we are storing within OpenAsset. Some more risks that we typically see with the firms that don't have a clear strategy, I would say, is poor user adoption, compliance and legal risk, but oftentimes increased cost. Not having that strategy in place while you are implementing your dam can definitely cost you more time, wasted time. So seeing increased costs is definitely a risk if you're not having a tight strategy. But on the other hand, there's a lot of benefits with having that tight dam strategy. And what we often see are firms that have a clear strategy behind their dam. They are maximizing efficiency. They are enhancing their collaboration, and they are preserving their brand integrity and keeping that consistent. They're also able to facilitate compliance and risk management better. And this is probably a no-brainer, but a reduced cost and improve return on your investment. So obviously having that clear strategy on expectations of not only how OpenAsset's going to be used or how your dam's going to be used, but what you expect from the users. Like what are their roles and responsibilities? How are they going to interact? What are the expectations for their workflows? What do we expect to come out of that? Having that documented is where we see the most success. And Caroline, I don't know if there's any other benefits that maybe that you ran across, as the dam manager at Perkins Eastman, but definitely feel free to add in.
Yeah, I think something that's really important to note here is whoever is owning the dam strategy, that person's going to have job security. So in this economy, just the reality is that you need to justify your position, and library positions and dam positions are often really undervalued. But if you have a well-defined strategy in place, it will help prove your value. So job security.
Definitely. Aligning with any tool that's essential to daily workflows can definitely help with that. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for that, Kyle. Well, just to kind of jump into it, I think a well-developed dam strategy really consists of these 5 components. which should be implemented in more or less a sequential manner. I'm going to go over each of these in more detail, but basically you want to start with identifying your point person and building out that support team. You then want to establish important policies and guidelines. These are supporting documents that outline how your digital assets should be used, the ways they're described, and who has access to what. It's also really important to identify potential challenges and pain points, and then set those clear, achievable goals. I think this is critical to help build your roadmap, and focusing on those quick, early wins will help you build momentum and confidence. You're also really just going to work towards building a space that people trust, which basically means is you want to make sure that your dam is reliable. It's important that users know that when they go to that dam, they will consistently be able to access quality, secure images easily. And then finally, create that culture of dam integrity. This is really about outreach and training. You want to promote a culture that values the importance of the dam and also data integrity. And in many cases, this might be a sea change for your company. None of this stuff happens overnight. It's a process, but it's about kind of shifting the mindset of your organization to really value the importance of your data. Okay. Okay, so just to go into it a little bit now, more in detail, the first step, identify that dam manager. Ideally, this has been a person that has been specifically selected for this role. Preferable to have a background in library science, but it's not necessarily required. But really, they should have experience working with visual assets, maybe photography, media, marketing, or communications. They need to possess a strong understanding of diverse file formats, and most importantly, this person should have a passion for data and organization. This role should not be assigned to like a disinterested coordinator. And then, in this economy, if you lack the funds to create a role and you're kind of tasking someone with an existing position, this additional responsibility, find that person who really likes spreadsheets, because that's usually a good litmus test of who likes clean and organized data. And then when you offer it to them, I mean, this is a really great professional development opportunity. And then you should also give them a raise and invest in training. Give everybody a raise. But this role can be referred to in multiple ways. My title is Digital Asset Manager, but it doesn't have to be that. Alternative titles include things like Content Asset Manager, Digital Archivist, Digital Collections Manager, Media Librarian, and many, many more. But regardless of the title, this is the person that should be able to dedicate at least 50% of their role to the dam. These includes doing dam-related tasks that are reviewing uploads, applying metadata, working with contributors, talking to the vendor like Kyle, managing users, monitoring those statistics, and advocating for the dam's ongoing use and improvement. And something I'm always talking to Kyle about, I'm like, who else is in this role? Like, who else is in my seat? So, Kyle, can you answer that?
Yeah, that's a good question because it varies across from firm to firm, and you definitely made some good points there, Caroline. We often will see folks in marketing roles own open assets. So sometimes it will be whether it's a marketing manager or a marketing coordinator or someone who has their hands heavily with graphics, like a graphic designer. I do think that, having someone that is interested in data integrity and organization is going to be important to, identifying the person that should be managing the dam, because we find that data nerds will be able to really just manage open assets
Hey.
in a much better way. And to your point, Caroline, like aligning yourself with your dam or any other, viable business tool, it definitely creates visibility, and it also it helps with professional development. So, but as far as like the actual role, we tend to see folks in marketing, I would say, in, marketing, usually own open asset.
Okay, so after you found that person, you need to expand. Um, One person cannot do this alone. It takes a village. And a strong support team is really essential for effective dam management. These team members, they may not necessarily be the primary stakeholders or users, but they play a critical role in providing those resources and advocacy for the dam within your company. So actually, none of what I've accomplished so far could have been done without my support team, especially my boss, Sarah, who has been with me like every step of the way. Um, But when building your team, it's really important to aim for diversity while including individuals in senior positions. These are the people who are going to promote your dam, share success stories, and lend their authority when they need it. This is especially important for, say this person is a new hire or a junior dam manager, who may face challenges when advocating for the system. you know, it can be really hard to say no to a principal who has 40 plus years of experience. So having that support system in place really will help them make decisions and kind of stand their ground. And depending on your organization and how it's structured, your support team might look different. At Perkins Eastman, my support team spans multiple departments. So um, my immediate circle is the visual assets team. So I work very closely with a small group of photographers and retouchers. That group lives and is backed up by the larger marketing department. But then I also work a lot with communications. Because we have the employee module, I'm liaising with HR, I'm working with accounting, and probably most importantly, supporting the architects. And building strong relationships with these individuals in each of these departments, I think, has been really instrumental in how far I've come. And then finally, when you're establishing this group, just a little bit of advice. It's going to be really easy to identify who will be on your team and those who might not be as supportive. My advice to you would be to go with the ones who be helpful and then prove the other ones wrong. Okay, this is my favorite slide. I love guidelines and standards. So guidelines and standards are really important to establish authority, clarity, and consistency. These are the things that are going to act as the foundation you need to effectively manage that dam and ensure that everything is organized, accessible, and utilized in a way that supports everybody. So first thing first, policies. What is a policy? A policy, Webster says, a policy is a rule or a guideline that outlines how something should be done or managed. A policy really, it should start off with a purpose or a scope, define certain terms, and then outline various objectives, as well as roles and responsibilities. But what I think the most important thing about policies is that they are approved by senior management and they're accessible to all users. I could write 20 policies, but if nobody sees them, it doesn't make any difference. So a few policies that I've implemented at Perkins Eastman are first a collection development policy. So this outlines exactly what we want and also don't want in our system. It prevents the dam from becoming kind of like a dumping ground. And this is also helpful when an architect will be on site. They'll take a picture with their phone. It looks really nice, but we have a professional in-house photographer who does a great job. So we really only want that professional photography to be featured in our proposals. So that can live somewhere else. I also have a data governance policy, and this really provides clarity on who is responsible for what. It also outlines the different standards, permissions, responsibilities, all of that needed for the effective management of our dam. So just as an example, like our governance policy stipulates that every asset in the system needs to have a basic level of metadata before ingestion. So mandatory fields include things like a file name that follows our convention, keywords, creator, creation date, and clearly described usage rights. This is really important because it ensures that our team can confidently use any image in the database without worrying about copyright infringement. The next part of this is a controlled vocabulary. And a controlled vocabulary consists of a set of predefined terms and phrases that are used to describe and categorize your digital assets. By standardizing this language, you ensure that everybody is speaking in the same way. This will really help reduce confusion and improve your searches. And if you're starting from scratch with building a controlled vocabulary, I really suggest is trying to find that balance between macro and micro levels of categorization. Instead of using multiple terms to describe the same concept, I try to select a term that fits the most assets accurately. Just as an example, rather than use terms like concert hall and proscenium, we use auditorium. And this is for simplicity and consistency. Too many words can really muddy the waters, but on the other hand, too few keywords might limit the searchability. So you really want to be broad enough to be inclusive, but specific enough to be meaningful. And finally, a structured taxonomy. So a taxonomy is like a filing system for your digital assets. It helps you organize them into categories and labels for easy access. By keeping this consistent, you're going to create a system that is more efficient and user-friendly. And OpenAsset is great for this. It lets you apply that metadata at both the project and the file level, which makes assets easier to find, and it helps you scale your DAM appropriately, even when you're dealing with large amounts. This is something that was especially helpful for me during some of our mergers. We could integrate assets easily without disrupting the existing structure. It's easy to identify challenges. You really just have to ask. People are often super eager to share their complaints and frustrations. And when I started, I encountered common challenges that were not specific to Perkins Eastman or even the AEC industry. So the first challenge was backlog management. There was a significant backlog of images to be processed and uploaded. They had been sitting on a server, kind of living in a purgatory. There was also the challenge of data integrity. Even though Perkins Eastman had a digital asset management system, the data was still living all over the place. It was really difficult to determine what was current, and users just couldn't trust the data they were seeing. We also had the issue of consistency. Because there was no one person to take charge, there were no workflows. There were no standards, no policies for how the data was being stored and described. The next issue was engagement. People knew the system existed, but few people knew how to use it well. And finally, mergers and acquisitions. As we merged with other firms, we acquired their image libraries and history. Figuring out how to fold these legacies into our established system was a challenge. So by resolving these challenges and different pain points, you can really demonstrate the value of the DAM system and build confidence among your users. And I think it's always important to kind of start small and build momentum. Here, these are just a few of the early wins that I went out for. Like I said, when I started, a common complaint was there was project images that were not being uploaded, and teams couldn't rely on OpenAsset. My team leader and I made this my #1 priority, and I was able, once I cleared the backlog, I was able to position myself as somebody who's reliable and helpful and gets things done. So this was really important for people to understand my position and create a sense of authority. Next was creating a file naming standard. So Because I was the first person in this role, there was no, one person dedicated to managing. The file naming conventions were kind of all over the place. Here I worked really closely with my team and we developed a standard and then we coordinated with OpenAsset to apply it, to apply and update those names on a global scale. The goal is for us, if you come across one of our files, just by looking at that name, you can easily understand key information such as project name, project number, a brief description, and format, and integrating merged assets. So Perkins Eastman has grown significantly in the past few years. We've merged with various companies. And as we've merged with them, like I said, we've absorbed their history. And I'm sure Kyle can agree with me. I have found mergers can be quite emotional. Oftentimes, companies merge because they lack the resources to continue. So within this process, I really made it a priority to try to retain the visual identity of the company while also creating that one unified narrative. My hope is that new employees will go to OpenAsset and feel valued and connected to our company's history. Next is building a space that people trust. And really, this is all about reliability. Um, I try to make our system reliable by implementing first really rigorous quality standards. This is supported by our collection development policy. Um, and less is more. We are, maybe to a fault, incredibly selective about what assets are ingested into our system. And this is a way for us to ensure that we're presenting only the best visuals, which enhances our competitive edge. We also, for every file that enters our system, we have a comprehensive metadata capture. This is supported by the controlled vocabulary and the taxonomy. So I capture metadata both at the project and the file level. I apply keywords, text-based fields, and then that comprehensive naming convention. Again, the goal is that I want to ensure that when you come across one of our files in the system, you know exactly what it is and how to use it. I also apply really strategic permissions. This is supported by the data governance policy. So permissions are really carefully managed to maintain that quality. Only a select few are allowed to upload, and there are various tiers of access. This is where it leads to a little pushback sometimes, but it's not a democracy. It's essential for maintaining at that high level of quality and control. And building that culture of data integrity. I mean, the work here, even if you create a strategy, it's never done. You need to maintain a culture of dam integrity to ensure its continued success. So even with things like a carefully constructed taxonomy, quality measures, if you have policies and guidelines, the if you build it, they will come approach does not apply. So even with those advanced features like AI, users still need a lot of guidance, and effective outreach and training is equally crucial. So outreach and integration. So here I work really closely with the OpenAsset team and Kyle specifically to implement those new features and advocate for system upgrades. A few I'm still waiting for. It's also really important to build that knowledge base. And I like to acknowledge that everybody has diverse learning styles. Some people, like myself, prefer a clear written manual, while others respond better to video tutorials or live sessions. I like to offer all three. So I have a library of user guides and manuals. This is stored in a category in OpenAsset that people can easily access. It's also where I keep the policies. I also do some short screen shares walking through various features. And then finally, training. Training is really important. Live training is really important. So I have an open monthly training session to review the basics and answer in-depth questions. And I developed this approach really to enable everybody to access the information tailored to their specific needs. And then just to end this before we get into the Q&A, I want to acknowledge that this is a lot of work. This is a lot of time. This is resources. And you absolutely can't do it alone. You need a team and you need stakeholder buy-in. So I don't mean to present this in a way where somebody's going to accomplish this within a month or even 6 months. I mean, this is big picture, long-term goals.
Awesome. Thanks, Caroline.
Mm.
So we're going to get into the Q&A session. Folks, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask Caroline, or any questions around the topic of building that dam strategy, feel free to pop your question to the chat and we'll begin to address them. Or the Q&A section, I should say.
Kyle, I have a question. So
Sure.
something that wasn't immediately clear to me in the beginning and something I've seen with some of our mergers is, can you please explain the difference between that file level metadata and the project level?
Yeah, definitely. So being that we are a project-based dam, we are revolving around the projects that you all design and build. And what's nice about that is the project level metadata, it transfers to everything that's involved with the project. So all files. So what does that mean? That means that if you have a project that you are tagging with a certain market sector, for example, you do not need to tag all of the files. So if we have an education project that has 100 images of a school, you're not going into OpenAsset and tagging 100 images of a school. You just tag that one project with education. So it's important to understand that there is a difference between the project metadata, which helps you find your project, and all of the files associated with it. And then we have our file metadata. For example, we can tag a file with a file keyword that will help you find your files, that needle in a haystack image that you may be looking for example. I do see a question from Rico. How do I upload InDesign files of infographics in a meaningful way? So Rico, you are able to upload InDesign files directly into OpenAsset, and we can share some resources with you on how you can do that. So that's possible. We also can create a specific category for your infographics. And we often see firms have an infographic category that houses that content so that their team can just go into infographics, get the infographics that they need to build their presentations.
So I see a really good question here that I think it's important to answer, but somebody is asking, do we have architects and designers on the DAM support team? How do you manage 50 plus active projects and know when the best renderings are available for use? The answer there is, I mean, the DAM support team, I'm the only digital asset manager, so it really all falls to me. And the way that I do it is I just follow up consistently. I send emails. When people get me new images, I'm asking, can I archive these old images? When final photography happens, I'm again asking what can be archived because I want to make sure that for the junior coordinator coming across a project using it in a proposal, they are using the best of the best.
Caroline, and this is specifically regarding smaller marketing teams, but how would you suggest getting more input from senior staff to ensure that information is accurate and up to date?
I mean, I'm incredibly persistent. And I don't forget what it was. I think it was like a podcast or something, but
Mhm.
it gave me a piece of advice where like if you're talking to somebody who you're a little intimidated by, but you need answers, like the best strategy is to act stupid and cheerful. So if you're so if you're just really friendly, like really need help, like can you please help me out with this, and just kind of consistently following up, and there will be those people that ignore you 100%. So it's kind of about like going around, finding that assistant project manager, somebody else on the team that might be able to answer that question, to get those answers and to get that data.
Yeah, that's a good point. And there's a lot of questions coming in around that. Um, how do you collect information from subject matter experts that you may not personally know yourself? Um, so good point there. Another question that's coming into the chat that I think makes sense to address, especially when talking about the strategy behind your dam, the organization of specific project files. So one question that came in, Caroline, is how do you categorize your project files, specifically referring to professional photography versus site plans or renderings or miscellaneous project images, for example?
Yeah, so that's where that comprehensive file naming convention really comes in handy. So we sort all our files by the original file name, and it's alphabetical, right? So it starts with the project name, and then there's the format. So all the photos live together, all the renderings live together, all the plans live together, and they fall in a way where usually the photography is featured first. And then bigger picture, like we categorize things first and foremost by practice area. We have project level metadata tags for things like service type, in addition to sustainability information and awards.
How do you use your employee module effectively? I'm trying to convince my leadership to invest in this feature and would love to hear how it has helped you.
Yeah, so the employee module is funny because, I mean, it's a great tool, but we brought it on primarily to use for marketing, to generate resumes, customized resumes that they could drop into proposals for specific bids. But really, it's become kind of like this platform that's kind of brought our firm together, because we have so many different offices, so many different employees. People log on, they see their profile, they email me that something is wrong, and then I fix it. Um, but yeah, and then it's also been, I think, for project teams, it's a way because you can apply certain search filters, it's a way to find talent. So say, like we need somebody who speaks Mandarin. If you apply the correct field filter, you'd be able to find that.
Awesome. Two questions I definitely want to address. So first one, um, and Caroline, this may not pertain specifically to Perkins Eastman, but the question is, do you also include construction documents and or other types of non-image documents? So really, do you
Hmm.
include other maybe project or professional project photography in your DAM strategy?
Well, I mean, for a project in our open asset, like I really like for the project to be whole. So to tell the whole story of the project from start to finish. So that will include things like plans, sketches, renderings. But in terms of like construction documentation, and things that are a bit more technical, that lives somewhere else. Like this is mainly a visual database.
Are you the one that identifies the hero image?
I do, but then my boss changes it.
All right. My next question was, who do you think should be identifying the hero image? Uh,
I got one right recently and it really made my day. But no, my boss is and also she's like more my collaborator, but she's the head of visual assets and photography here. So she has a really good eye. So she always knows exactly what image to fit that kind of wide banner frame.
I see a great question that came in around convincing leadership superiors to invest in a dam manager. So, what helped convince superiors at Perkins Eastman to invest in a dam manager and open assets specifically?
Um, that's probably more of a question for my boss, but what I think it was we just merged with a lot of companies, and the idea of folding all of those assets into our open asset was extremely overwhelming. Also, like we just, Perkins Eastman, even before I started, they did take their data pretty seriously. Like it wasn't like I was walking into something without any structure in place. So I was very lucky in that there already was a bit of a controlled vocabulary, and they were using the file and project level taxonomy systems. I mean, you just have to find the right person and make your case over and over again. But it's hard. I mean, nobody wants to invest in this stuff. They think it's anybody could do it, but it's, not true.
I'm starting to see questions come in around project data. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. Do you use OpenAsset as your central location for project data in addition to your visual assets, or do you have another platform like maybe a Deltek Vantage Point, for example?
Yeah, we have vision. But we're switching over to Deltek or to Vantage Point pretty soon. So yeah, so that's, I like to think of Open Asset and Vantage Point as two sides of the same coin. So Vantage Point provides the data while Open Asset provides that display. Because when you go into Vision or Vantage Point, I mean, Vantage Point's better, remarkably so, but it's clunky. It's just information. There's a lot of tabs, a lot of fields, a lot of it, necessarily don't have something to do with, because so many different departments use it, accounting, architects, marketing. Um, there's a lot of stuff there that you don't necessarily need. So it can be kind of hard to really find what you're looking for.
Are you the one that's maintaining the data in the CRM?
Um, yes and no. I mean, I definitely clean it up. But it is primarily, I mean, it's both the project teams who are inputting data like start dates, square footage, the team members, vendors, and all that other stuff. And then marketing comes in and they'll add like a project description, um, and other things like that. And add it like if we win an award, that will go on there. Same thing with sustainability details.
Awesome. Do you have any specific suggestions on how to get a firm of 500, so a firm of 500 people, to get excited about using OpenAsset and specifically having access to tag images and to tag images with their taxonomy?
Mm, I don't let people tag. I just do it. Because I like to maintain that like strict quality control. But in terms of getting people excited, I mean, this is for them, right? Like this is all to showcase all of this hard work and to get more work and make money, which is like the entire purpose of this. So kind of like having more of an upbeat approach to it, offering a lot of training, sending those emails, introducing yourself. Um, I like to think of myself a lot as an extrovert in an introverted field. That is a huge advantage for me. But if you're more, introverted, that's okay too. Like just rely on email. Um, Craft some messages, work with marketing to create a campaign. Work with Open Asset. They have tons of ideas for that stuff.
Definitely. And like my idea, just kind of some of the takeaways that I'm taking away from this webinar, Caroline, you had mentioned, aligning your DAM strategy with your overall like business goals. And I think if you're aligning the strategy with your business goals, you can build confidence with OpenAsset. And
Mm,
if you are, for example, if you're a firm that's experiencing scattered assets, you have assets all over the folder structure, some in OpenAsset, they're all over the place. Like this could be an opportunity for you to have that one example of, the question that always gets asked, like, can you help me find the hero image to this project? Like that could be an opportunity for us to maybe tag those files, those hero images, to show
mhm.
the team how easy it is to find them. Oftentimes I see firms like try to get folks excited by showing them something that's just not possible without OpenAsset. So like,
Yeah.
how can we see all of our education project images in less than 4 clicks? Like that's
Hmm.
possible. In OpenAsset, not possible with your folder structure. So trying to kind of show them how we can make their day-to-day a little bit more
Yeah,
efficient.
if you fix people's problems, they're gonna be excited. If you make their lives easier, they're gonna be excited. And especially like I said, establishing like early on, like visible wins, that's really important. So that really kind of will broadcast to your entire organization that things are changing, things are getting better, and you're there to manage it.
And then to the question around, how do we convince leadership to invest in a dam manager? We actually had the pleasure of having Caroline's boss on the webinar today as well. And just to kind of read her comment,
Oh, hi,
Sarah
Sarah.
she's let the team know that we've always had a photo team manage OpenAsset. Due to the workload of photography department, OpenAsset was always pushed to the back burner. We finally realized that the only way to truly move forward was to make a dedicated position. And these are Sarah's words, not mine. Best decision ever.
Oh, that's, yeah, I like it too.
All right, so some more questions coming in. I would be curious to see a sample of policies if you're able to share at some point. We have the vocabulary and structure parts covered, but don't have a policies document to share firm-wide.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know if
Honestly,
I would share like my policies, but like building a policy, um, I mean, I built my policies by looking at a lot of other policies, um, by using the internet. So, but yeah, I mean,
definitely.
that's something that I've talked with OpenAsset about with kind of creating some templates specific for policies around digital asset management. So that might be something forthcoming.
Yeah, and I think that that's definitely something that I'm taking away from this webinar is, how can we use policies to enforce the things that we need to enforce? So we can definitely get back on the policy question. And I think that's also something that we could probably have its own webinar on policies, or, having a dedicated vocabulary as well. Can you share best practices for leading a team to develop a vocabulary?
I mean, I think, like I said, striking that balance is really important. And to strike that balance, you need to really listen to everybody. You need to get that feedback. And sometimes you might get a lot of like, you know, junk. Like people are going to be like, let's tag chair. Um, but you don't want too many keywords. You want just the meaningful ones that will help people find the assets that they're looking for. So it's about, I think, opening it up and then kind of making those final decisions and narrowing it down and then circulating that. So letting people know, like, these are our terms.
There's another question that's for you, Caroline, regarding your training around library science.
Hmm.
Do you have any like dam industry advanced training or dam industry certificates?
Nope, nope. I mean, like I said, I worked in archives, but I primarily worked with physical material. But then in my last position, you know, I was tasked with starting an archive from the ground up. And when I started, I realized their digital assets were also a mess. So I was like, oh, we're going to get a dam and I will pass it off to my assistant. And then the pandemic happened and it just became my job. So that's really where I just kind of like dove right in and got really interested. I was kind of, I don't know, a snob in graduate school, where I was like, only paper for me. But now I'm I'm really excited about this stuff. So things change. Yeah. But there is like, if I wanted to, there is a Rutgers program where I could get a DAM certificate. Um, there's certain online resources available, and a good place to check is Henry Stewart events. They have webinars and also conferences, one of which I'm speaking at the end of October.
Awesome. Just going through the questions, seeing some of the questions have been asked multiple times, so we're going to skip that. But do you use your DAM for non-project specific images, like precedent images
Hmm.
that other teams may need outside of marketing? For example, projects that feature a certain construction material or detail. So more like precedent imagery, inspiration.
I would say everything has to be marketing level to be in our DAM, which means it has to be a certain file type and of a certain size and quality. But I mean, we do have stuff in there that I think is more for the architects than it is for marketing. So, it's hard to say no all the time. And there are always special cases. So while it may seem I have this like really strict control over everything DAM, I'm flexible. So yeah, but there's not a category for that.
Another question that came, it's actually a good question. Can you provide guidance and or a roadmap going from a folder-based organizational system to a DAM?
Mm.
Can you give everyone an idea of how long it usually takes to implement or to switch over? And I know that you came on board after Perkins Eastman implemented OpenAsset, but you were a part of the mergers and acquisitions of some of these other firms that we've kind of brought into your OpenAsset. So maybe you can speak to that process.
Yeah, it takes time. And more than anything, like you can create the system, and I think the real takeaway is that you have to invest in trainings. So if people don't know how to use it, it's really useless. So moving over from that folder structure is actually really liberating. So you can search for things outside of a folder just based on these keywords. So that's great. But you have to tell people that you have that ability. And I would say, depending on the size, I mean, I had one merger that took 3 months. I had one merger that took 6.
How does the implementation of AI tools within your DAM affect your metadata policies? So maybe there are features within OpenAsset that use AI that could affect your policy. Is that the case?
Well, we need an AI policy. So that is something that we're working on because that's such a huge thing, just outside of even the dam. It's important to kind of establish those guidelines. We don't use the AI features that much in OpenAsset, even though they are available. I mean, you can have the ability for OpenAsset to create a description for you, but I think our marketers are really picky about exactly what they want to say. So we kind of rely on that. But that's a great question.
And just kind of around AI and questions around AI, there are some questions that are coming in around AI. We are bringing more AI into the product, as you probably are seeing. Has OpenAsset explored the possibility of implementing a software update that would automate the image tagging process, thereby eliminating the need for manual tagging? It's a great question. We do have AI visual search on our roadmap. So the goal with that is for you to be able to search for your content within OpenAsset using natural language. So you type in what you're thinking about, maybe not necessarily a keyword, and you find that. So yes, that is on our roadmap coming soon. How often do you have live trainings to refresh existing employees?
Yeah, so I do them monthly. So I try to switch it up on the day because sometimes people have like weekly standing meetings that they can't make. So I've been trying to do it monthly on a different day. And then if there's a new staff member, especially a new marketing staff member, I can do a one-on-one.
And I know we're getting close to time, so just to take a few more questions, the question is, do you house stock photography in open asset at your firm? I'm going to add to that question. Like maybe you can speak to the type of content that you would house in open asset, but also like what does not belong in open asset.
Yeah, so we don't have necessarily stock photography. In our open asset, we're really um, strict about copyright. So everything in our dam, we like to tell our team that they can use confidently. And it's when you start going to like Google Image where you start, things get a little murkier. Um, but we do have things like we have like an architect's working category of like architects work, like here's a plan, here's a ruler. So if that's needed for an additional visual, they can grab it from there. And then also separately, I think we have access to like Adobe stock and things like that. But that doesn't live in OpenAsset.
Awesome. Thank you. Looks like we are still getting a few more questions. Let's just take a look. And are there any other tools or softwares that aid in your dam strategy?
Oh, I mean, Photoshop, Bridge, InDesign, PowerPoint. Um, all that stuff, which is great because you can just kind of drag and drop everything. And that plugin for InDesign is really helpful for our marketing team. But what else? Excel. I love spreadsheets. And that's helpful for organizing data. And what's great about that is I can create a whole spreadsheet of data and then I send it over to the open asset team and they can upload it automatically. So I don't have to go in and change things. If I have a huge batch of say like names I need changed at a file level, I get them that I give them a spreadsheet and they just do it.
Awesome. So now we have a few more minutes, and it looks like we've answered everyone's questions. Anyone else up? Looks like awesome. Jen runs a report of project addresses, and that reports via Excel. Easy peasy. I agree.
Right. You can also, they can import data and I can export data. So that's also very nice. Kyle, just a question for you, I guess. Like what is it like on your side? Like, do you get frustrated? Like, do I annoy you?
No, no, I think
Do
that,
I bug you all the time with all these
I mean,
questions? And
no, no, no. I think, if you've worked closely with the open asset team, especially the customer success team, we are all invested in making sure that open asset is driving efficiency for marketing workflows. And I think just from an open asset standpoint, like we want to make sure that we're ingraining these workflows in your daily proposal workflows. So it's not annoying at all. Your questions are not annoying. If anything, um, they help us accomplish what we need. Awesome. So I see questions coming in about the recording, the call recording. We will be sharing a recording for everyone who's registered to this webinar. So if there were folks on your team who signed up that couldn't make it, they will also get the recording as well. If there's any questions that that have not been addressed today, our team will make sure that you all get answers. And then, obviously you can always follow up with us and continue to ask questions after the webinar. But I hope everyone has a great rest of the day, and thank you for attending, and thank you, Caroline, for providing us with your insight.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, we will share the chat history as well. Thank you, everyone.